let's make a scab. So I've been looking forward to making a scab. I've been looking forward to making a scab for a while now. Ever since I saw Ben start posting about designing the game and all of the cool scabs he was making in the process, I've just really liked the aesthetic. And I love that we're making ships using tinned fish tins and that everyone is embracing that fact. You know, we're not hiding their tinny origins, we're embracing it, ring pools and all. They're just really cool. So I'm gonna make one. It is still me though, and I do like to overcomplicate things for myself. So I need a concept. I need a thing. It's this, but it's this. This thing will take me 10 times the amount of time it would have done to finish it if I just did the simple thing in the first place. Which brings me to my next point. I bloody love fish. Well, sea creatures in general, it's just not quite as fun to say it that way. But I love them. Real ones, mythological ones, those crazy ones at the bottom of the trenches. Especially those crazy ones at the bottom of the trenches. They're all just so cool to me. And any excuse I ever get to shoehorn a sea creature or monster or fishy dude into a project, you can bet your arse I'm gonna take it. But for once, it actually kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm making a ship in the setting of Swill, so fish is definitely on the menu, boys, and I will be taking full advantage. So my idea is to make this a fishing vessel, where the tin part is there to hold whatever these sailors have managed to capture. But maybe someone got a bit too big for their waders and tried to contain a Kraken-esque type creature who's now breaking free by ripping up that ring pool and controlling the ship. It makes sense in my head, and I guess that's all that really matters. We want a very run-down, ramshackle, thrown together with any old bits of random metal garbage they could find kind of look. So I made this little hut thing. I don't know the official name of it. Is it a cabin, or is that just when it's below deck? Is it a cockpit? Whatever it is, I intentionally wanted it to have the vibe that if this was a real boat with the real laws of physics acting on it, it would probably capsize under the sheer imbalance. And everyone on board would deck it into the sea like me on every night out I had as a uni student. Because I am a millennial and somehow got stuck in the generation where we wore high heels whilst out drinking on the cobbled streets of Scotland. Honestly though, what the hell was that about? Have you seen this? Gen Z wearing trainers to the club? Unbelievable. I didn't even like the bloody heels. But when your frontal lobe hasn't developed yet, you just do what everybody else does. That got depressing. Moving on. Corrugated paper is a time-honoured staple in any miniature maker's toolkit, and it's perfect for the roof and some extra panel details too, like they had to repair broken areas and cover holes with whatever bits fell off. Now, part of the game requires we have some weaponry, and after finding a cool looking bit that I was sure I had ransacked long ago from the lifeless body of a dried up biro, I went on a pen rampage through my house and decimated any I could get my hands on, until I had 6 in various sizes. I may have decimated some of the intended bits a few times too, but we won't dwell on that. Again, having them all be matching isn't really the vibe we're after, so this worked out pretty well, because they were nearly all different. I used some keyboard parts to set them in and doused them in enough superglue and baking soda to recreate one of your Gran's worst kitchen mistakes, albeit not too dissimilar in flavour to some of her 1970s recipes made as intended. We are going to rust the hell out of this thing later, so the baking soda and glue gets us off to a pretty good start in texturing. And spoiler alert, if you're doing something similar, probably pin them in through the side of the tin because, well, this wasn't quite as strong as I'd hoped to get away with. The story in my head is that the monster has worked its way through the hold up into the cabin, hut, cockpit, semi-detached bungalow and is breaking out anywhere it can to pull open the tin, releasing the rest of its body. So to pull that off, I moved on to making the tentacles. This rollmaker from Green Stuff World makes the process really easy, and take that from someone who has, in the past, hand sculpted all the little grooves into things like this. I worked on smoothing things out a little bit and got to adding the suckers. And yep, I'm leaving that one there. I basically rolled, 100,000 tiny balls of epoxy clay, it felt like that many at least, and used a ball stylus to press them in and make a dent. As a contrast to the rusty, dingy boat, I wanted these to be a bit more cartoony, so I didn't blend them in too much at the edges for fear of the dreaded realism. And no, if you've just tuned in, this isn't your search history coming back to haunt you. Just like all those dreams you had where you accidentally clicked the hopefully never used share to Facebook button and tagged your mum. So things are starting to come together, and you know, I've been working tirelessly on this project, taking absolutely zero breaks to, I don't know, play Path of Exile 2 early access every single day at length, just as a random example. But I'm really liking how these tentacles are coming out in particular. I think they look quite nice, and I'm excited to get them stuck onto the project. I thought now might be a good time to mention that if you're enjoying the video or you would like to see me make more cool things in the future, then please consider subscribing to the channel below or even checking me out on Patreon. The support would mean the world and would help me be able to make more cool things in the future and more videos here on YouTube. So yeah, check it out if you fancy. Back to the boat, I grabbed the various selections I'd made earlier from my bits boxes and started adding details. I love when I get to just start gluing random stuff all over a project. Some washers over there, grommets for pipe spouts, beads, cogs, an eye for our little guy to see what he's doing, and these amazingly detailed little plastic things that are so perfect for portholes, and yet I have no idea what they are or where they came from, so I will never be able to recreate it. I used rhinestones for rivets, which I originally wasn't sure about as the scale was already getting a little bit wacky, but as I always harp on about, scale is only a suggestion, so I went with it. Oh hey, haven't seen you since last year. It's never funny when people do that, is it? But it is January, which, I mean, I'm sure you can tell it's January in Scotland and bloody Baltic by the fact that I'm dressed as if I'm going to start running weekly ritual sacrifices at the local WI meetings. But because it's been the holidays, I, just like probably all of you, barely even know who I am anymore, let alone what I was doing on the project. I took the liberty of spray priming the project off camera, which you can probably tell by the fact that my fingers look like I've been having it off with the local chimneys. So it's just time to get back into it. What was I doing? I started off thinking I wanted something pretty even in terms of base colour across the ship, so I used a mix of silver and coppery metallics to buff into the black. Not filling in every single nook and cranny, as the black will help with some depth. Now if you're asking by this point, how did they seal a monster in a tin in the middle of the ocean? Why would they have a ship that was a one-time use? You can't reseal a tin, Lex. Well, just give it a rest, okay? This is not a safe space for those kind of closed-minded opinions. I never said they were smart fishermen. After gluing back on the inevitable cannon injury that occurred when someone who is definitely not me dropped the whole ship off the table, I could move on to some washes. Everything got a coat of rich brown with a bit of black. I wanted the ship to be pretty dirty and gross, but for a pop of colour I grabbed some greens and blues to tint a couple of the corrugated panels. Please don't judge my priming method here, it worked perfectly well, except for the couple of tentacles that kept going limp and flopping over, which reminds me of your dad. I went with a nice lilac-y purple as a base, making sure they got a really even coat. Because I wanted the contrast in styles between boat and tentacle, these needed to look a little bit more flat. When that was dry, I went in with a darker purple wash, as we still want some shadows, don't get too crazy now, which really brought out all of those lovely segments we worked so hard for. I struggled a bit in terms of colour palettes for the builds, I just couldn't really decide what I wanted. So I actually tried a few different sucker colours before settling on a classic tealy greeny blue and got that slapped on. I mean, it's better than the cardigan, isn't it? Surely. Anyway, I was getting to a point with the paint job where I was thinking, this is looking a bit meh, isn't it? It wasn't hitting, was it? I know it's all going to get covered in rust, but it looked weird all being basically the same colour except for those corrugated panels. So I've added in some extra metallics, some silver, some copper, a few more washes and dry brushes, and it's looking a little bit better. It's nothing crazy, it probably looks about the same from where you are over there, but it is at least a little bit of an improvement. For the tentacles, all I did to those off camera was do another wash in the purple and another little dry brush, so those are all pretty much good to go. So I guess all we need to do now is get rusty. Didn't think about that before I said it, which is probably quite evident. First step in the rusting procedure is to get some texture laid down. I mixed up a paste of the crustiest, crunchiest things I could find. Some sand, wall filler, modelling paste, all of those personalised websites we made in the early 2000s. I smooshed that into any crevices and anywhere we needed a bit of roughing up, blending the edges with some water. And surprise, for once I actually remembered to mask off the eyeball with some blue tack so that it wouldn't get painted over. Honestly, might be my proudest achievement. Next, I grabbed some Dirty Down Rust and went to town. Top tip, you gotta shake the absolute life out of this stuff. I'd say keep shaking like at least double the time it takes you to regret not buying a vortex mixer. And again, you can blend this out with some water, but I went pretty heavy, so not too much blending required. It's -16 now, so say nothing. Now, I'm not sponsored by Dirty Down Rust. I mean, hit me up if you wanna. You don't. But I just love the product. It looks really good with not too much effort once you've got a hang of it. And it's just very realistic. Yeah, let's get you some tentacles. I cleaned off the eye, which after my previous statement of joy, I had accidentally gotten rust all over, and got to work on the tentacles. I had shaped these two to come out of the porthole and this pipe above it and wrap around the ring pool, as if we were midway through the escape. Then I added all the other tentacles writhing and bursting out of the tin itself. I even added a 9th spare one I'd made as a backup because I felt like it just looked a bit better. And so if you have a problem with my made up creature having 9 tentacles rather than the traditional 8 or even 10, well, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe he's got a friend down there, and all their other tentacles, bar that one, are just doing other things, like maybe a nice Sudoku, or 7 Sudokus. So it's our favourite time of the week where we bring out the matte Mod Podge. It's gloss. The lid's broken, hence why he lives inside of his brother Matt. Let's not dwell on that part. It's gloss we need this week, and I basically never use this stuff. This jar has been with me for a long time. I mean, just opening it smells like a school of trout have set up shop, lived their whole lives, and died a long time ago. But this is what we need to make our lovely oily residue. That's just oil, isn't it? We're making oil. Oil. I mixed up way too much gloss Mod Podge and black acrylic ink, as is my curse whenever mixing anything, and then I grabbed a dropper so I could carefully squeeze the oil all over the inside of the tin and the base of the tentacles. As these tins are usually filled with some sort of seafood packed in oil, and in swill they're sailing on it, oil in the can just makes sense to me. I made sure to cover all the glue inside and just carefully work a little bit up the tentacles. I brushed on some more as drips and spills over the sides, and not forgetting the tentacles opening the tin themselves. Any pipe details got the same treatment too. I was trying to hold back here as I could have too muched all over it, but I didn't want to take away from the lovely rust, so I kept the oil fairly minimal. Then all that was left to do was to allow the whole thing to dry. And with that, our scab is all finished, and you know what? I actually really like it. Quite pleasantly surprised at how well it came out, if I do say so myself. But don't worry, I'm not going to take too much more time away from you seeing the sexy tentacle shots at the end. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this, maybe consider subscribing or checking out the Patreon, or please leave me a wee comment down below as well, and I'll catch yous after.